the more nuanced and holistic our measures are and our report cards are, the more we're going to potentially see gaps. I think if you don't see your gaps, you're just ignoring them. And I think we want to see them and then use that data to find fit. And I think when you can find fit for every kid, those gaps will go away. It's like, the further you can move away from a one-size-fits-all approach to success, the more roads and paths to success you'll have, and the more definitions of success you'll have.
Hello and welcome to The Future is Clear, Teach Like It's 2045 webcast series. My name is Scott Carr from CESA 2, and today our topic is measuring what matters to drive a career and community-ready school system. Joining us today is Corey Erlandson and Sara Greenwood from Mishicot School District, and also Paul Kaskovich. Tried not to butcher that, Paul, sorry. Paul Kaskovich from Otus, which is a great data warehouse platform. Paul and I met each other probably about a year and a half ago, and we've done some work together in regards to Otus. So glad to have the three of you with us today. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Let me give you a little information about each. So Corey is in his 22nd year in public education, 12 years as a high school and middle school social studies teacher, 2 years as a middle school assistant principal, and 6 years as a middle school associate principal, and 6 years as a middle school principal. He's in his second year as a superintendent at Mishicot School District. Corey lives in Manitowoc with his wife and 2 teenage sons. Sara has been in education for 20 years. She started in the Wisconsin Technical College system and then moved into the K-12 system as a school counselor. For the past 2 years, she's been serving as the assistant principal at Mishicot. Sara's been married for 17 years, has a daughter and a son that are in the Mishicot school district, and has a mini golden doodle named Curly, named after the great Curly Lambeau from Green Bay Packers. Love that. Anytime we can talk about the Green Bay Packers on our podcast here, our webcast, it's definitely a good day. And then we have Paul. Paul is a former teacher, school administrator based out of the Chicago area. For the last 7+ years, he supported school districts throughout the Midwest to track measures related to student learning. In his free time, his 2 daughters, ages 3 and 1, and his wife keep him busy. And that's when he's not watching the Bears lose to the Packers every fall. And I have to say, Paul put that in his bio. I did not go out on a limb. So appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to start out here. I appreciate you guys joining us. Tell us, how's the year been going for you?
Good. Busy.
Busy? How about yourself, Corey?
It's been good. We survived homecoming barely. But the energy is really good. A lot of growth, a lot of change. So there's challenges with that, but they're good challenges.
Yeah. Truly, it's your second year, right? I got that right?
Yes.
Yeah. I bet when you walked into a great school district. So the ability to move into your second year with some good vision out in front of you, I'm sure you're enjoying the ride.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys again taking the time and talking a little bit about like what we want to look at here is how do we measure that student success in that career community life readiness approach. I know you guys have been doing some really great work in your school system. I know that actually, Corey, you walked into, I think, a pretty good system, if you would. I know some of those that were before you. Jeff Walters is a friend of mine down in the Palmyra area. We grew up together. Marcy Kuhn also did a lot of great work in the Mishicot school district before you guys. So I'm really interested to hear about it as we go. But to get started, tell me a little bit about your journey, each of you. How did you get where you're at? A little bit about the why you decided to move into this direction. Also, why are you moving towards that career focus?
Well, I can start, Scott, since you mentioned Marcy Kuhn. I'll be honest and say I did it because Marcy told me to, which is my excuse for a lot of things.
Yeah, right.
But when I was working in the technical college system, I was working at Lakeshore Technical College, which services the Mishicot area. And Marcy and our principal at the time, Tom Ellenbecker, wanted to revamp their CTE, the CTE department here in Mishicot.
Mhm.
And so they reached out to me as a resource to say, we know the technical college is really working on preparing individuals for in-demand careers. And we want to align with that to make that a seamless process for our students. And we're doing this, at the time we called it portfolio process, and that was in 2009. And really it was academic and career planning is what they were doing.
Yeah, wow.
And really wanted students to start investigating what they wanted to do when they left high school, and wanted to rid our students of that feeling that they had to go to a four-year school to be successful. So we really dug into dual credit. We dug into certifications and work-based learning. And then when a position opened here at the district, I joined their team here, and we continued moving that work forward.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, and you guys have done some really good stuff. I know Jeff used to talk a lot about it. I was at Hartford for a couple of years with Jeff, but he used it as a model program in regards to the career exploration and the ACP work that you've done. So yeah, good stuff. Corey, how about yourself?
Well, as you mentioned, I was lucky enough to walk into this, so there was a lot established already. But I think, throughout my own career journey, I just think a lot about this idea that there's college bound, and then there's this other thing. And then if it's this other thing, it's all about careers, and it's about what job you're going to do. And for me, I think it's just been about a more holistic approach. So let's look at kids, and let's look at what we're providing for kids and families in the education system more holistically.
Mm-hmm.
And then the challenge is, if you're not just relying on test scores or just relying on GPA, what are the indicators? And then once you identify those indicators, how do you make it make sense? I remember being a part of kind of trying to redefine A, B, C, and D for parents, and their heads explode because they say, I know A, B, C, D. I don't know these other numbers or these other systems. So it's really just been a journey to try to find the right indicators, and then find a way to clearly communicate those to families and the community and to the students themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. Tell us a little bit real quick. How big is Mishicot? How big is your district? How big is the community there?
We just did our third Friday count, and we're at 900, just under 950 students. So been on a pretty steady growth trajectory, which is not real common in rural Wisconsin schools. We're up about 10% over the last 5 to 6 years. So 950 kids, 150 staff, and the village itself is 1,400. But we were made up of 8 municipalities, mostly rural.
Cool. Northeast part of the state, right? Up by the Green Bay Packers, right?
Close.
Okay. That moves us at Paul. Tell us a little bit about, now that you're coming from down in Illinois, I know that, but tell us a little bit about your journey. Why do you see, how did you get where you're at? Why do you see this being important?
Yeah, so my journey, I started as a classroom teacher. I was teaching 7th grade social studies here in the Chicago suburbs. As technology hit the classroom, I was like 25. So I became like the default guy to help with your iPads and unplug it, plug it back in, and that kind of thing with the different teachers on the staff. And I kind of parlayed that into a really passion for educational technology. I got a master's in educational technology, and got an administrative position where I was working with another school district to really support teachers with implementing technology to make things more efficient and effective. And part of that process was vetting different things that were out there, different companies, different softwares, things that would be a good fit for schools. And that's how I found Otus, which is where I've been for the last almost 7.5 years. And it's a great platform that really helps with some of those measures and tracking learning. Now, how that's kind of evolved in the process of redefining ready and college life readiness, we've seen a huge uptick in interest for a platform that can track some of those things that aren't your traditional metrics that Corey referred to, your grade point average, or some of the things that are on your traditional state report card, or kind of state testing data. Those things have been in place for a long time, but other things like, earning industry credentials, participating in dual credit courses, doing college campus visits or things like that are often tracked in various sporadic spreadsheets or forms, or there aren't really processes to do that. And it becomes really challenging to report on that. So that's how Otus kind of got involved in this, is just based on a need and a set of challenges that schools are facing, not just in Wisconsin and Illinois, where I'm from, but nationwide. This kind of movement has taken off in various parts around the country, and that's how I was able to initially connect with Corey and then Sara and the team in Mishicot.
Yeah, and how we met, right, was I don't remember how did we connect? Was somebody gave me your name or vice versa? It was a while ago, maybe almost 2 years ago, but at least we talked about how can you start to look at and incorporate more of the metrics around career readiness, and you kind of took off with that, and it sparked some interest in districts though too.
And really wanted to learn more from you, Scott, in terms of what you were seeing as kind of the principles and philosophies behind this work, and what are the key things that are research-based and are shown to drive student learning, is that's ultimately what we all want to do, is really help improve outcomes for students. So that's where I was kind of tapping into you, Scott, to really learn about the research behind it all and what are some of the metrics that schools should be tracking.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, the work has really, really snowballed. We got a lot of great things going on, a lot of districts I've been, assisting and helping with. But one of the things that we have talked about in this work is the why, what, and how, right? So like, why the need for a shift? And I know, Corey, Sara, you guys have been really progressive with this work. You've had Mishicot has had a really strong journey, right? Sara, you talked back 2009. That's well before our initiative here in the state of ACP work. So there's been a focus on a shift. It's more towards that career readiness approach. So tell us, why do you believe there's the need for that educational system change? Why do we need to move towards a career readiness approach in our school systems?
Well, not all students are four-year college bound, and I think traditionally that's what high schools were preparing students for, or were explaining the next steps of, but we weren't always helping students understand what the next steps would be if they weren't four-year college bound. So in 2009, when we started this work, we had about 13% of our students not having any identified plan when they left here. They didn't know what they were doing. And it was pretty steady. And our test scores, whether it was the ACT or at the time the technical college was using the AccuPlacer, forward, or it wouldn't have been the forward at the time, but whatever test we were using at the time, those scores were all kind of staying the same for about 5-6 years. Not much was changing. And they wanted to see change. They wanted to see some movement in those numbers. And so that's when we as a team began to make a concerted effort to give all students all the information. So if I walked into my school counselor's office and said, I think that I want to go to school for nursing, okay, do you know all the paths that you can go on for nursing? Also, I think I want to go to school for welding. That's great, but I'm going to take you on a tour of a four-year college in case you change your mind. I'm just going to take you and let you see it. And in some cases, they would change their mind immediately. In some cases, they'd go and work in the construction field and they'd still be there, and I'll see them in the community and they'll tell me how great they're doing, and that's fantastic. But it was really that concerted effort to teach all students about as many opportunities as we can so they could make that educated decision on what their next step was. And if they changed their mind as an adult, because we know that adults change jobs, they know how to navigate that process.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, you're giving the opportunity for your students to right, to see not only relevance in that process, but to be able to make their own decisions rather than the decision being made for them, which we see sometimes in our educational system, you know, where students feel like, yeah, I have to go to college, or, you know, even though it doesn't fit, I'll try it. And that really adds up to a lack of success and completion rates for our college system. So, Corey, how about yourself? What do you think?
When you think about the system, I guess I think about, you know, we want to be leading our own charge, so to speak, of what success looks like and how it's defined. And if not, I think then somebody else defines it for us. So, you know, politicians are going to come along and pass legislation and say, this is what success is. And then we, you know, kind of find ourselves chasing our tails. When we're in reality, if we can go ahead and say, this is what a successful Mishicot grad looks like. We have those indicators there. We can adjust to some of those political wins, but the core stays the same, that this is the portrait of a graduate. And we can stand behind that. And then it doesn't sound like we're trying to spin anything when, you know, when the scores change or you know, any of those metrics kind of change around us. So I think that's really important. I think that when you ask parents, you know, yeah, they care that their kids are getting a good grade, but I've never met a parent that defines their kid by their state test score. And I think that whole picture is much more accurate. I think about my own kids, you know, I want them to do well in tests and things, but I want that whole child. I want that. And I want to be able to see that all these hours and all this time we've spent in school has developed that, you know, has grown them holistically. So they're ready to be good people, as well as good employees, as well as good students. And I think that my child standard is reflected better in this approach as well. And I just see unlimited possibilities for students that owning their own learning as well. So we give them enough information, give them a scoreboard to continually check and say, okay, I'm doing well here, but I'm a little short here, and have an adult guiding them through that process. I think it's powerful what a kid can accomplish when they are aware of and know how to move forward with their own success, I guess.
Yeah, I would imagine you guys are seeing some great results in regards to students then, you know, owning their own journey, right? Which allows us, at the end, we want our students to be continuous learners. You know, as they leave, the journey is not over with. They're able to see their purpose, but also reach towards what they want to become and what they want to do and continue that process. So that's really cool. I like how you say all that. So I know that your district's been kind of the pioneers in some of this work. And so I want to kind of move into the what, you know, like, what is it? What does it look like? You know, our listeners, you know, historically, tell our listeners here, historically, what has Mishicot done? You know, what are they currently doing that is related to that career readiness, maybe career exploration? What are some of the things that you guys are doing?
So our ACP program officially starts in 4th grade. Our school counselor at the elementary school does a little bit in the younger grades, but we start getting them onto Zello and doing some career exploration in 4th grade. In 6th grade, when they get here to middle school, they develop an ACP website, and then they carry that website over into their high school time. I'll speak specifically to what we do with the high school. We follow kind of the DPI's know, explore, plan, and go philosophy. We kind of followed that before they came out with those words, but it was very fitting. We really have our students get to know themselves in their freshman year and know the world around them. So we're going to have them do community service. We're going to have them learn about the co-curricular activities that are available here at school. do a lot of the self-assessments within Zello. Just get to know the things that are around them and the things that are available to them. Sophomore year is when we start attending some career fairs. So we're very blessed to have a Chamber of Commerce that is super supportive of education. So our sophomores all go to something called Career Expo, where they learn about those two different types of career clusters. And the nice thing about the volunteering that we do, the business tours that we do, Career Expo, students write a reflection either in a thank you note to the organization or just somewhere that they'll keep on their website. So we never have a exploration event. It is always purposeful. It's never a one-time, shot in the dark. We reflect on all those things and how it impacts our decision making. We take all juniors on college tours to four-year and technical. All juniors do job shadows. All seniors do mock interviews. The way that our program works is each teacher is assigned a small group of about 14-ish students that they serve as advisors for their 4 years of high school. So those advisors will then be the chaperones on any of those campus tours. They'll be the ones reading the reflections and reviewing the reflections with the student. So they really develop a relationship and partnership with that student to help walk them through their journey. There's a lot of different components to it. We look at everything. We look at their ACT test scores or their pre-ACT, and we analyze those results and set goals around those. Our advisors do grade checks every Tuesday so that we know where the student is at and the students know somebody's holding them accountable. It's a really nice program, and that reflection piece is really helpful because it helps them tie each event or each lesson to the next event.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. What does the connection to your community look like? Because as you say, job shadows and some of those types of things. Talk a little bit about, what does that connection look like with your community and your business partners?
Yeah, so as Corey had referenced, we have 1,400 people in our little village here. We are surrounded by small, rural, unincorporated villages. But we have 350 business partners that we have, record of. There's probably more that we work with that we don't just have listed. But we reach out to the Manitowoc area, Two Rivers, Green Bay, Sheboygan, Milwaukee. We really work hard to find our students job shadows or mock interviews with people or at places that would employ them in their future career area of interest. So this wouldn't work if we didn't branch out, and having the support of parents to understand that we might ask for you to drive your child somewhere or ask for you to give them permission to drive somewhere. They've been very supportive and seen the results, so they continue to support that.
Yeah, that's really cool. I kind of am hearing the awareness component to it at the younger age, and then a connectedness, and then that exploration kind of process, which, like you say, aligns to the ACP work in our state. What does it look like at the lower levels? Is it more awareness? Is there any type of connectedness or exploration for the younger students? Yeah,
so our 6th graders will do community service. Our 7th graders will do business and industry tours, and then our 8th graders will do college tours as well. They're just all on a little different, smaller scale with kind of more of that awareness that you referenced, Scott, where instead of learning about specific majors or having questions about financial aid, it's more just about what general college life looks like. Right. Letting them know that if we go to a local manufacturer, there's more than just welders that work at that manufacturing facility. They have accountants, they have marketing people, they have IT people. And sometimes, students forget that. They say, I'll never work in a factory because I'm going to work, in an office. that might be at a factory. So really just helping them learn more about what they don't know, because we live in a little small part of Wisconsin, and there's a whole world out there that we want to expose them to. That's why we do that volunteer work. They get to learn about things in our community that they might have not even known existed.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I bet it has big payoff for your students, especially with them, again, finding that relevance in your school system. Corey, I know this is your first superintendent leadership job in position here in rural, in new to Mishicot. Knowing that there was that history there at Mishicot, how did that play in your role to coming there? What did you know about it? How did that impact your decision? Tell us a little bit about what you saw in front of you when you walked into that position.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I don't know how many years ago it was, but I remember being at a conference and first hearing about ACP as probably an assistant principal at that point. And the presenters were Sara and Marcy. I didn't know them at the time, but the way they kind of laid it out, I was pretty intimidated. I was like, they have done a ton of work. This is a full system that they have created here. That's really great for kids. And it's a little daunting to think about trying to take that and put it into our own system. But I guess for me, that helped me understand what strong leadership the district had a history of, how many good systems they had in place, how willing their staff had to be to kind of tweak what they're doing to support this. I'm sure Sara will mention this too, but it's, one of the things that jumped out to me was that it's a for all by all system. So every kid is served through this program, but every adult needs to be on board to make it work. And it just doesn't work any other way. Everybody has to be fully invested. So that was just an impressive cultural piece to me, I think, in terms of, knowing that this was a job opportunity for me and just a very exciting place to be. Yeah, I think that's primarily it. I mean, I just see the opportunity, some of the vision I would have in terms of how can we use some of these different scorecards, so to speak, let's say, to speak to the community about how our schools are doing, to speak to the board, and instead of just bringing a single metric, to sit at parent-teacher conferences with a family and say, hey, this is where your student is. For a classroom teacher, for formative work, to say your students are strong here, but they're struggling here, and let's tweak what we're doing based on that. To me, that had kind of been a pipe dream, and now to come into a system where we're on the cusp of being able to do that soon. So I think that was all those things factored into my enthusiasm for this place.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that. I like where you're going with it in regards to the measurement piece. So it's that redefining ready a little bit, right? That you guys have invested in. There's a lot of districts in our state that have run with that redefining ready going back to like even 2017, where they're the staple behind the metrics, even the kind of that new metrics, the college, career, and life readiness. So what does that look like? How do you measure your school system through that type of a lens? How do you measure, or what, maybe even if you're not doing it yet, what do you see down the road on how to measure that work-based learning, in-depth, or career exploration? What does that look like?
You want to start, sir?
Sure. We do measure all of that. And 34% of our graduates last school year were in the youth apprenticeship program.
Oh, yeah.
So, that's a pretty good number in a graduating class of, I think there were 68. So the work-based learning and the dual credit, we allow students to do that simultaneously. So they're taking dual credit classes while they're here. They're doing their work-based learning. Some are doing one, not the other. But that's part of that for all by all, where we just, we want to be able to offer something to everybody. And so meeting all of those needs. The metric is participating and being successful in it. So, we don't necessarily count them if we have to pull them out of the program because they're not doing well. But because we do a lot of that front end work in middle school and high school with helping them learn about the different types of careers that are out there, it's very rare that we have somebody not ready to go for the work-based learning, for YA, or we have a in-house school to work program. They're usually ready to go with those things. And now we have courses set up in Power School, and so it'll be youth apprenticeship, manufacturing. That pulls into Otus. I can pull my work-based learning query, and it shows me all the kids that are in work-based learning. We can track those. We have a good partnership with CESA 7, that is our Northeast Wisconsin YA consortium, and they help us track the success of those students.
Yeah, it really is a solid support program for YA. And I don't know if you guys know this, but we're probably if not the top one, we're definitely top 3 in the United States in regards to YA and participation, the number of offerings, and how our workforce in our state is supporting that. So that's some really good stuff. You've got nearly, if not, if I didn't do the math here, but I think you guys are right at about 50%-ish. Or so in regards to participation. So that's really cool. Corey, tell me a little bit about how do you use some of these metrics to support your vision or the district's vision, connecting to, or how do you see that if you haven't been doing it yet, being new at Mishicot, how are you going to see yourself using some of these metrics to help, build some of that momentum in your community to support, this type of collaborative effort?
Well, I think again it goes to how do we define success, and it's a macro and micro question. So how do we define it for our district? How do we define it for each kid? One of the things, we have a lot of things to celebrate, and so I think about a fun conversation Sara and I had early on where there were some rankings that came out about college readiness, and we weren't really high on the list. And Sara, what do we need to do to get higher on this list? And she said, well, we're not going to. Well, of course we can. That's no growth mindset. And she's like, no, that's all based on AP participation. We do early college. We have all these college credits, but they're not through AP. It's the choice that we've made. And so there are certain paths we have to just be okay walking away from and saying, okay, we're not going to win the AP participation contest because we've chosen a route that's more locally appropriate. I think about that approach all the time when I think about the size of our district and the opportunities that we have for kids, but it's personalized. So if everything's personalized and you're kind of stepping away from those predictable systems that maybe a bigger district would rely on, then again, what is a scoreboard metric report card? What does that look like for the kid that makes sense? And so there's some value to identifying. I took these courses. I did this online course. Nobody else in the school did it, so there's nobody to compare it to. But it had value, and here's what that value is. I think the other component that I would add to that is we talk about soft skills a lot, and I think that's a terrible term to use for the most essential skills that everybody needs to have coming out of school and throughout life. And so, how do we take this and move soft skills more to the forefront and measure them in a meaningful way, but not just measure, but teach them and have that formative measure along the way too, to say, this is how all of our systems are working together to promote those qualities that will make students successful regardless of which way they go, but not relegating them to the margins of soft skills.
Yeah, I love how you say that. When Paul and I talked, and I was speaking to him a while back about, can you find me somebody who's using Otus and really having an impact, on this career readiness? And he said, yeah, Mishicot, I think, and I said, yes. I mean, how you talked about it, Corey, the conversation between you and Sara, I really applaud you for, right? You're leaning into what your community and what your students, need, versus looking at, we have to do what is told upon us by the state or what other people are doing. So I really applaud that work. I think that's great. It's great to hear. It's great to hear. So, Paul, I mean, I haven't thrown many questions your way, so I thought I better involve you a little bit here. But I am curious with this. What's your outlook, Otis's outlook on this type of movement and being involved in supporting schools? Tell us how that impact happens and where you get yourself involved. I know Sara mentioned you guys here just a moment ago, but tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple different things that I want to kind of touch on based on the conversation earlier. The first piece is, getting the data from all of these different systems and spreadsheets and forms and the different soft skills to the more overarching data points that are a part of all of this readiness is one thing that we do. We can connect with student information systems. We can pull in data from a variety of different sources. But what I think is a strong benefit of our system is that it gives visibility to all of the stakeholders involved in that journey. It's not just school leaders like Corey and Sara to be able to see how students are doing. It's something that's accessible to those teachers or the advisor groups where they'll be able to see that for their groups of students. But it also is visible and actionable for students. So they can take agency within the system and get a sense of where they are on their own individual scorecard. And ultimately, it results in helping schools with what Corey described as kind of those macro level types of scores and data points, but also micro level scores and data points for each individual student. So school districts can say, hey, we had 34% of our students participate in the youth apprenticeship program. Or at a micro level, looking at an individual student, they have a report or a scorecard that shows different levels on those various soft skills to traditional scores like a GPA and your ACT scores all in one place that really provide that holistic view so that a student, their family members, that are supporting them through their whole K-12 journey can see some of the data and the metrics that are associated to an individual student and also see the growth and maybe some things that the student's adding to that along the way. It's just one place that not only kind of brings that data together, but is interactive and allows for that visibility throughout.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit. After our conversation, I know a long while back where we started talking about the different metrics and being able to measure that. What type of momentum are you seeing, like not only in our state, but the United States around gathering that type of, those types of metrics?
Yeah, I think it's becoming more and more prevalent just because, as Sara said, I think there's a growing amount of students that are moving away from that traditional four-year university is my destination pathway after 12th grade. The reality that I'm facing as a parent with young kids trying to save for college is it's not affordable for everyone, but it's also maybe not a good fit for everybody. And so whether it's a rural community in Wisconsin or it's an urban community or suburban community outside a major metropolitan area, there are students with different needs, and we're seeing that from different school districts of all shapes and sizes across the country to say, hey, we need to be able to track some of these things on that are beneficial to our student community, to our community as at large. So it was great to hear that conversation. That was important to hear because that's kind of what brings people to the table of Otus is, hey, how can we track these specific metrics for our community that aren't necessarily aligned to students participating in AP classes or AP scores? It's a lot more comprehensive, and it's something that isn't always isolated to rural areas either. It's in all different types of communities and school districts.
Yeah. Yeah, to your point around, college, I'm not sure if you guys have seen the report from Georgetown University, but they're identifying by the year 2030 that right around 30%, maybe a little bit higher of our workforce is going to require a 4-year degree or higher, right? So we look at that and go, wow, But yet we right around our numbers are at about 65 to 70% of our students exit our high schools and go on to college. So that math doesn't really match up. So with that, you know, my curiosity goes to, I really liked the reading, what you sent me, Sarah, the vision of the importance of measuring more than just math and ELA. And you guys are doing that. Either you or Corey, tell me, you know, how do we shift some of our mindsets of our teachers around that concept that, you know, we need more options as students exit. We need that work-based learning. We need to be able to measure that. You know, how is that conversation held with your staff? How are they embracing some of that work? So you can have more options for your students.
You know, it wasn't overnight by any means. But I think bringing some relevance to some of their content areas, like if I know I'm going to be a carpenter, I'm going to be all in on woods class. But if I can take my geometry class at the same time as a tech ed class, and they're going to call it geometry and construction, and I'm still going to learn math, but I get to build stuff, that's awesome. And then the behaviors and the buy-in from students change, and then the teachers' belief in it, buy-in in it changes as well. You know, when we do those field trips and we talk to business representatives, I will secretly ask them before we go, please talk about how you use math in these career fields. Please talk about communication and if you have to do any writing or speaking. And I ask them to throw those things in there. So then teachers are able to, if they hear it, if they're on the field trip, they can bring it back to their classroom. But otherwise, the students bring it back to the classroom and we can start bridging some of those gaps. Our teachers have become so bought in that, you know, they'll attend summer bus tours with our chamber and go learn about manufacturing or construction careers so they can bring it back to the classroom. You know, and they'll go to college. We have a history teacher who went and got a master's degree in history so that she could teach dual enrollment classes. You know, they're looking for ways that they can help meet those needs now. So having them go on some of those field trips rather than just sending the school counselor or sending the teachers who just have, you know, a specific class, like just the tech ed teachers or just the healthcare teacher, sending all teachers on those things as appropriate, has really helped get some of that buy-in too.
Corey, how about yourself? I mean, have you experienced any kind of resistance, or has it just been clear sailing for you? So you've been able to just kind of jump on board and move, or and if not, how, you know, maybe talk to us about what's a plan for you if you start to see a little bit of that pushback.
It's a loaded question, Scott.
I know. Sorry.
I had a lot to
Ask
say.
it. It's like the debate last night.
Well, that's actually part of my answer. Okay, so first of all, yeah, a little resistance, and sometimes resistance comes from just a place of I want to do it my way. I don't understand the history. I don't understand the why. I don't understand the big system, and we do have to take action on that. We have to protect the mission and vision at all costs, and I think sometimes that's hard work from a leadership perspective. Period. But I think we've already been doing that, and I think it's really just ensuring that everybody every day is coming in with a clear sense of the why. The how is going to change, and that we're going to have to adjust based on the kids and the budget and the politics and all that stuff, but the why won't. And I think that we have to make sure everybody buys in with that. And if they don't, it's okay. It's just not a fit here if we're not buying in with the why that is front and center here. I think that's part of it. I think as a teacher, I was kind of a tear down the system kind of guy. You know, I ran a simulation economics class. We threw out the grade book and we did everything based on, you know, real life and did crazy things. It was a lot of fun. I couldn't tell you. I know my students learned a lot. I know they enjoyed it. I just don't know what they learned. I didn't know, as a newer teacher, exactly what they were learning. I just knew that we were having a really intense, great time doing it. And so now looking back, I think I probably was driving the leadership and the board nuts with the lack of outcomes that were clear. Again, they were all intangible. We knew there was good things, we just didn't know what. So, the longer I'm in the system, the more I feel like, yep, there's a lot of value in algebra and Shakespeare and physics, even if we don't use those in our day-to-day life ever once we leave high school. There's a lot of us that just won't. But the drills and the process and the learning and the problem solving along the way are valuable. You see people talk all the time about, well, they should have taught us how to do, taxes in school instead of algebra. I think, well, you don't need to teach fifth graders how to file their tax returns, but you do need to teach fifth graders how to have a healthy, good, open, honest debate about the value of raising or cutting taxes and the impact that it'll have, and to do it without being jerks to each other. And I think that's real life, and that would benefit us as a community, as a society, greatly. We just have to make sure we're doing a good job. And again, broken record, we have to know what we're measuring to know that we're doing a good job with that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's some good information. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on this one, but I did want to touch on it because we are kind of running out of time here. But I know when we look at metrics and we have some really defined metrics, it can expose gaps. It can expose, that we're not meeting the needs potentially for, some of our students with disabilities or of color or socially economically disadvantaged. Have you guys utilized any of your metrics to help close the gaps? And if so, what does that look like? What have you done?
Yeah, I think that goes back to that for all by all, and really, a former superintendent would say that if you went to Mishicot, you got a diploma by design. We are conscious of the fact that some students need to work in their youth apprenticeship because they're bringing home the money in their house, or that some of our students have disabilities that aren't going to allow them to go and hold down a job on their own. But they're still going to participate in advisement. So, we have students who are nonverbal, who are, they're never going to work in an unsupported work environment. But they are going to build relationships with their classmates. They are going to be a part of those interpersonal activities to the best of their abilities. We're going to include all students in all things to the level that they're able to be involved.
Yeah, that's good. It is one of our biggest asks is, how do we close gaps versus, allowing gaps to continue? So that's some really good stuff. Corey, a question would be, how do we do this? We're standing behind a lot of history here with Mishicot and some of what you guys have done, a lot of great things. But how do we move to a career-connected learning approach in our system? How do we shift the thinking? Let's, maybe even with parents. How do we evolve this so we're landing in what is really needed to develop that relevance type of a system for our students?
I think that is really actually connected to the last question about gaps. So the more nuanced and holistic our measures are and our report cards are, the more we're going to potentially see gaps. I think if you don't see your gaps, you're just ignoring them. And I think we want to see them and then use that data to find fit. And I think when you can find fit for every kid, those gaps will go away. It's like, the further you can move away from a one size fits all approach to success, the more roads and paths to success you'll have, and the more definitions of success you'll have. So that personalization is a big part of it. We're actually, we have a referendum question coming up to do some pretty significant remodeling. And one of the things we need to do is sort of transform and tear out all these one size fits all computer labs that we put in when everybody needed computer labs and convert them to personalized learning spaces. So that's a strategy, even just in the physical space, that places that, yep, we're dealing with 16-year-olds, so still supervision is required, but some individual space so that they can be on a video call with a professor, so they can be in a small group working on a, maybe a psychology class that's offered at the university that 3 of them are taking together. We have to have a space for that as well. And just it's 100 different ways to meet the needs or the goals of that student. The sell to families on that is pretty simple when you sit down and you're able to meet with those families, whether it's conferences or their junior meetings with their counselor or much earlier, say, my son or my daughter, very hands-on, doesn't, they don't love to read, or whatever the case may be. What are we going to do for them? And we're able to say, oh, great news. We've got a pathway. We've got some options. We've got a way to both address the need to learn to read, but also to customize it to where their interests lie. I think Sarah's example with geometry and construction is a great example of that, where we say, yep, the math isn't going to go away. We need to learn the math, but let's learn it in a format that fits you, that it excites you, that inspires you. That comes down to creating more and more pathways. It feels inefficient, and sometimes that's where we have to make sure we get our boards on board, we get our community on board to say, hey, this isn't the most efficient approach for jamming 30 kids in a room and having a real predictable curriculum. We're going to do the opposite. We're going to kind of blow the doors off a little bit, personalize and customize based on both the needs of the marketplace, and the realities of the marketplace, but also the desires and the goals of the kids and their families.
Yeah, that's some great, innovative, forward thinking. I applaud you for that. Paul, tell us real quick here as we get to the end, where do you see Otus kind of being able to fit into that shift of mindsets and how you guys can be supportive?
Well, I think our flexibility in the platform, that we can inherit traditional metrics and things like that, that community members, students, teachers, or school districts that maybe haven't started this work or are just thinking about starting this work, we can inherit all of that type of information. But then as different school districts and various communities determine some of the different metrics that they want to track, and that might evolve over the course of time. We have a lot of flexibility in whatever that might be, whether it is some numeric scores or it's more anecdotal information or student goals down to an individual student. There's flexibility in that. So I think that's one of the big benefits of our system, is that we can be flexible and track, measure a bunch of different things for schools. And as things have shifted up to this point, that's been something that we've been able to do, as I kind of talked about earlier. But if it shifts in different directions or schools are constantly evolving, there's a lot of different ways that we can potentially help schools with that. So I think that flexibility is a key thing.
Yeah, I would support what you're saying, because every time I've worked with you, you guys have been always open to ideas and flexible and, wanting to grow and help support districts. So that's some great work. Well, all right. I want to shift here a little bit. Have you guys, I'm sure you've taken a peek at our webcast series, who's been on the list. I'm kind of curious, anybody stand out to the 3 of you in regards to someone you might want to listen to down the road, or maybe that you might want to connect with? Any thoughts?
Well, you're kind of putting us on the spot, Scott.
Yeah, a little bit. I thought I'd throw that out there. You don't have to answer it. I was going to see if Paul would say anything regarding some of those that are on the list.
There's a lot. Like the one that I don't know, I kind of had bookmarked on mine was that one that was forging real connections. I think that one's coming up at the end of October. So yeah, that if I'm putting on a spot for one, that's the one that I'm.
Yeah, who's that with? I don't remember all the titles and who they're.
Um, that-
Sylvester
Oh, Chisholm.
Chisholm.
yep.
Yeah, so Sylvester has his own podcast, his own webcast. It's the Global CTE podcast, and I've been on his. So maybe I'm gonna have to share that in my newsletter at some point. But yeah, Sylvester is the top dog when we start to talk about, podcasts in our area, our space here. So Corey, anybody that stands out to you?
I think they all look pretty interesting. I don't have one that's jumping out. I guess I don't have one that I would highlight at this time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I totally
okay.
understand. Well, it was our goal with our webcast to be able to offer kind of this build up to our what we're having here in April, which is an unconference. The future is clear. Teach like it's 2045 unconference, and I'm hoping we talked a little bit about this before we started recording. I'm hoping you guys might find some interest in it. If nothing else, maybe spread the word. But it's our goal to pull together a conference, a 3-day conference, where we're going to actually try to allow it to be more interactive. It's not your traditional conference. Maybe do a design sprint, or actually we are formatting it that way, where you come in, we start to identify some of the issues, some of the problems, we start to look at some of the solutions, and by the time you walk out, that you got some alignment for those solutions. Our third day, you're going to be allowed to bring in business partners as a part of your trip in. So we're really excited. We got a great list. I'm going to drop in our chat. I'm going to drop in the first flyer that we've pulled together, highlight some of the people that are going to be involved in the next couple of weeks here. Definitely within the next month, we're going to pull together a website where you can get on and see all the bios. We continue to have more people interested in coming in and speaking even at it. So we're really excited about that. So get a chance. We're hoping you guys get involved. All right. So one last final question for the three of you. As you know, and you just heard it, our tag here is teach like it's 2045. What do you feel education is going to look like? What does a classroom look like, or a school look like when we get down the road to 2045?
Innovative. That's the word that comes to mind.
Yeah, that is. We need to get there, definitely, for sure. Yeah. Corey?
I've predicted wrong on this one throughout my career, but I'll take another crack at it. I do think everything's going to be deconstructed, decentralized, personalized. I think we're going to be getting to success a million different ways. I think we're going to have to find cost-effective ways to do it. I think that there's no future that I'm going to talk about that doesn't include AI. I can do a week's worth of work in about 10 seconds at times, depending on the task. And where we're banning it or staying away from it, I think we're kidding ourselves right now. That is going to be, it's going to replace some things that have been pretty heavy lifts in terms of our time and our thinking. And that's going to change the way, we were all told that we weren't going to be, have a calculator with us wherever we went. So we had to know math. That was false. We have a calculator with us everywhere we go all the time. So the impact of that, I think, is going to change what skills students need when they come out of school, because it's not going to be the same set of skills.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. I like how you talk through that. Paul, how about yourself?
Corey stole one of my words. I was thinking personalized, but maybe I'll go with like more individualized. I think even if you think back 20, 30 years ago with the changes that have happened in education, it's moved that way. And I think it's only going to continue to move that way, where, every student has unique needs, abilities, desires, challenges, and having the capacity and the capabilities to really focus in on each individual student is where I hope we'll be able to go, especially with innovative tools like AI and other things that could come down the road.
Yeah. Innovative tools like Otus, right?
Yes.
To help support that. Absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate you guys joining us. Let our listeners know, how can they get in touch with you if they'd like? All three of you.
For the Mishicot folks, you can just go to our website at mishicot.k12.wi.us. All our contact information is on there. Email, call, stop by, anything you like, we'd be happy to help. Sarah's doing some work with mentoring other districts who are trying to get into this already, so we're happy to help, and we're kind of used to it. It's good.
And any questions about Otus, my email is really easy. It's paul@otus.com. Happy to answer any other questions or information that you'd like to know about our system.
Appreciate it. Thanks for joining us, Corey, Sarah, and Paul. Really excited to continue to network and grow this work together. Thanks again for joining us. And as we depart, remember, the future is clear. Take care, everybody.